BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. The first thing I would like to say is thank you to everyone who heard our upload on the murder of Sharon Tate that we put out yesterday. And if you haven't checked that one out yet, I hope you'll listen to that one in the future. The murder of Sharon Tate, available here on Black Box Online Radio. And yes, indeed, it is now the 9th of August. We are seeing the 51st anniversary of the passing of Sharon Tate, as well as everyone that was with her at the house on Cielo Drive: Wojtek Frykowski, Abigail Folger, Jay Sebring, and Stephen Parent. And I would like to add something right now. I heard this on the podcast Court Junkie. I'm a big fan of it. I listen all the time. I love the host, Jillian. And what they said on Court Junkie was, and to put in quotation, I don't know the exact writer that said this, but someone once wrote, "Every life matters at every single moment, all the time." And I would just, throughout the duration of this recording, I would love to hear what people would have to say about that. You can write your response to that in the comments section. Every single life matters at every single moment, all the time. What do you have to say about that? Is there any sort of agreement or disagreement that you would like to share? But yes, discussing the life of Sharon Tate, I would actually like to begin with something from Sharon Tate's husband, Roman Polanski, who was talking about her in an interview. About 10 years ago, I heard an interview with Roman Polanski after I had watched a couple of his movies, very specifically, Chinatown, Rosemary's Baby and The Ghostwriter. I saw Chinatown much later. And I was listening to him, and they were discussing the life of Sharon Tate and her passing, and the interviewer said, "What is your response to people who are wearing Charles Manson t-shirts? What is your response to people who think highly of Charles Manson or just even think that he is a wise and insightful individual?" And Roman Polanski's response was, "Do they know that he murdered my wife? Do they know that he murdered my baby? Do they know that he killed my wife? Do they know that he killed my baby?" And that was his response, just saying that Manson was a despicable individual who was responsible for the murder of Sharon Tate. When it comes to Sharon Tate as a person, though, to deviate from only thinking about her in terms of her passing, Sharon Tate is heavily associated with the film Valley of the Dolls, and perhaps that's the most famous film that people attribute her to. And I remember Valley of the Dolls for a couple of very specific reasons. The first is, I didn't grow up in the 1960s. I'm only 32, so I relied on my parents to talk to me about the 1960s and the 70s, mind you. But what they said about Valley of the Dolls was that there were two films that were just really shocking for that time period. Number one was The Graduate, and number two, of course, was Valley of the Dolls. The Graduate, of course, because you have Dustin Hoffman and this whole setup with Mrs. Robinson, and it's something risque and scandalous. But Valley of the Dolls as well, in a different direction, it's also pushing the envelope or exploring some territory that was trying to be honest and trying to highlight the darker sides of life, but showing how this could affect different people. And I had no idea who Sharon Tate was when I saw that movie. About a year after my parents had told me about Valley of the Dolls, it just happened to be on television. And I remember watching that. The first thing, I was very surprised to learn that the Valley of the Dolls is not talking about simply beautiful people or beautiful women. They're talking about pills. But there was this thing that was posted on Facebook once, kind of like a meme challenge or something like that. And I would love to hear anybody's responses to this question. But if you could describe your personality or your life in 5 movies, what would it be? What 5 movies represent you? And I don't remember 4 of them that I chose, but I definitely remember the number 5 on my list was Valley of the Dolls. And why? Because to me, that movie is all about the cycle of destructive behaviors. It's about getting caught up with the dissatisfaction of life, but refusing to change, recognizing that you have a problem, but still refusing to go down a better pathway. And I think all of us have those types of moments in life. And I really don't like giving away spoilers, so that is just kind of what I thought the movie meant to me. And I just wanted to say that about the life of Sharon Tate. Now, Sharon Tate is somebody that we remember for a variety of reasons. Number one, she was a very big up-and-coming movie star, up-and-comer, and her life was tragically cut short. I mean, I was just reading an article from Town and Country magazine that really wanted to reinforce the point that she wanted to be remembered as an actress, but she also really wanted a family. She wasn't so caught up with the Hollywood party goer lifestyle. And when you have a husband like Roman Polanski, I don't think that that is necessarily an outrageous statement, because that Town and Country article also stated the point that it's possible that Roman Polanski did horrible things to Sharon Tate, including, I mean, the way they described it was putting her into unwanted threesomes. But, I mean, according to Tom O'Neill, they found a videotape of Sharon Tate being raped by two men on a camcorder in the house on Cielo Drive. It's possible that Polanski did some very terrible things to Sharon Tate, as well as to a host of other individuals. People might like his movies, but he seems like somewhat of a disgusting individual. And I almost said that I was watching Chinatown. I saw Chinatown a few years later, and as a Roman Polanski film, it was so hyped up, like everyone saying that's his best film. And I was just like, you know, it was definitely on my bucket list of movies to watch, and I saw Chinatown with Jack Nicholson, and it really didn't do it for me. I think because you know how sometimes the bar is so high, and you have such a high expectation for something, and then you're often left feeling a little bit underwhelmed. Just throwing that out there. But when it comes to the events that happened involving the murder of Sharon Tate, you have conflicting narratives, you have conflicting stories, and a lot of this stuff does not seem to be very consistent. Even to this day, we don't know everything that happened involving the murder of Sharon Tate. But what we can definitely say is everybody at the house did not deserve to have an ending the way that they did. And there is an enormous sense of tragedy involved, because based on how unnecessary, gratuitous, uncalled for that those murders were, and Charles Manson even said in an interview segment that he didn't expect that Sharon Tate was going to be there, but all of the other pieces of the Manson literature state that Charles Manson would have known that that particular woman, he might not have been able to identify her by name, but that individual, Sharon Tate, would have been in the house for a variety of reasons. So what we can see with this situation is that Sharon Tate was someone who was about to start a new chapter of her life. Motherhood, slowly edging away from the world of Hollywood. But another thing that I was reading in the Washington Post was that on the last day of her life, the 8th of August, 1969, she spent it arguing with Roman Polanski on the phone about coming home for his birthday, because he was in London at the time. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what a way to spend the last day of your life. Yeah, she's eating lunch at the poolside with her friends, and then she gets on the phone talking to Roman Polanski in London, and they're just getting into this dispute about she wants him to come home, number one, because she's 8.5 months pregnant. And the second reason is because she wants to set up a birthday party for him. And she has everything all planned out. And also, they're married. And I mean, a lot of people talk about this from the Hollywood circles about how the lifestyle of a director or an actress puts an enormous strain on the marriage, being gone for such a long time. And they even explore some of these things in Valley of the Dolls. Now, would Sharon Tate have gone on to do very great things with the cinema? I think so. And I say that because she was climbing the ranks of Hollywood. And that's another thing that we really should take away from all the events that happened with the life of Sharon Tate. Hollywood has its own bureaucracy, its own politics, its own power structure, its own underworld mechanisms. There are all sorts of criminal elements that go on with Hollywood, and we even have the term Hollyweird, because many people who are involved in the Hollywood circles do some very bizarre things. Once you have concentrations of wealth and concentrations of power together, people are going to do some very, very destructive and uncalled for things. And I'd like to give a shout out to YouTube user Rick Hansen, who has been, dedicated listener to the show. He left a very insightful comment about how once people enter into an elite circle, they become detached from reality. And somebody like Roman Polanski is an excellent example of that. If he's filming his wife being raped on videotape and he's in the background just talking into the camera so they know that it's him, I mean, talk about being detached from reality, let alone the sex scandal that Roman Polanski had in 1977. We did a whole upload about that on this channel called The Several Crimes of Roman Polanski, and we did discuss some of the actions towards Sharon Tate in that one. So with this one, what I can say is that Sharon Tate was somebody who, if I've gathered from listening to some interviews with people who knew her as well as her biographer, she was somebody who wanted to distance herself from a lot of the negativity associated with the Hollywood underworld and the Hollywood subculture in general. She recognized the destructive elements involved with this, but at the same time, the Hollywood destructive elements were just waiting to break out and just unleash themselves, unleash havoc upon the city. And that's what happened first with the Tate murders and then the LaBianca murders the following night. So what we can see with this situation is, I think that Sharon Tate would have gone on to do a lot of very good things in the cinema, because if you look at somebody like Jack Nicholson, who was heavily connected to Roman Polanski, his career began to expand and to do more films and to do more popular films and to increase his overall popularity and recognition and notoriety as an actor. And I believe that Sharon Tate would have done that in the exact same way. Throughout the 1970s, she would have been in many films that you would have recognized, and she would have gone on to achieve a different level of stardom if she stayed down that pathway. But they even talk about this in Valley of the Dolls, though, about how it can be such a strenuous experience working on a movie picture, yet why are people still doing it all the time? They're complaining about how they hate Hollywood, yet why are they still involved with it? They're complaining about how it's taking a toll on their personal lives and their relationships, yet why are they signing on to do more and more films? It's like the cycle of destructive behaviors involved with that. So what I would really like to do is just keep this as a short upload, but I would like to say that rest in peace to Sharon Tate, as well as to Abigail Folger, Jay Sebring, Wojtek Frykowski, and Stephen Parent. All of those individuals that we just mentioned, except maybe Abigail Folger, but all of them seem to have been caught up with some type of sketchy behavior. As we said, Frykowski, Stephen Parent, and Jay Sebring. They may have been caught up with sketchy behavior, but they definitely did not deserve to go out like that. And right now, we can just remember Sharon Tate as someone other than just a murder victim, but someone who wanted to experience the joys of motherhood and to experience more prosperity in life. Okay, all we have to say is rest in peace.